Loulou has been a woman in business and entrepreneur for the past 10 years. She's also a host of a top 10 most influential business and startup podcasts in the region.
I exited this business in 2020. Since 2019, I've been investing in startups, started the podcast in 2020, Conversations with Loulou. It's a COVID baby. I know we live in a society here where people are not very comfortable in being very vulnerable, but I try to push it to try to get more out of people because that's the only way that the podcast will be successful. Be intentional about what you want to say, who you want to say it to, and why are you saying it? Be yourself, and that's how successful content creators become successful, not by trying to imitate other people.
What is the biggest secret behind successful networking?
Whether you are an employee, entrepreneur, or content creator, it's all about who you know. Successful networking, treat people like people. So it's so simple, but that's the secret to successful networking.
Good morning, LinkedIn. Good morning, YouTube. This is a C-Suite Influence podcast where we interview leaders about their day-to-day motivations, about what makes them leaders as they are. And in this episode, we're talking to Loulou Khazen. Loulou has been a woman in business and entrepreneur for the past 10 years. She's been building her own companies and she's been helping others to build theirs. She's also a host of a top 10 most influential business and startup podcasts in the region. So we're talking about media brand, business and investments in this episode. Welcome, Loulou. It's so nice to have you this morning at Podster.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself.
Sure, I think you did a fairly good job. So, as you said, I've been an entrepreneur for over a decade now, nearly 15 years here in Dubai, and I started my journey as an entrepreneur in a startup advisory company. That was back in 2009, and this sort of got me into the the entrepreneurship space and got me to understand a little bit how entrepreneurs build from zero. How do they work on their business plans? How do they work on their financial models? How do they engage with investors in an early stage? And how these discussions are, and what really makes a good entrepreneur, or what are some of the ingredients. And this has led me to start my own company, which was called Nabish.com. Nabish means search in Arabic, and it's an online marketplace for freelancers. It was the largest in the region and the first, and we helped connect over 10,000 businesses with over 100,000 freelancers across the region. And I exited this business in 2020, and since 2019 I've been investing in startups. So I lead something called Spade Ventures. It's a network of investors, and we invest typically $500,000 up to $2 million in early stage tech companies here in the Middle East, North Africa and Pakistan. These are our areas of interest. And I also started the podcast in 2020, Conversations with Loulou, which really the idea was, it's a COVID baby. So the idea was to bring people that I've met throughout my 20 years in the UAE, who are fellow entrepreneurs, who have been building, who are part of that first wave of entrepreneurs that were building back in 2011, 2012, which is when I started. To bring them on the on the couch next to me and have unfiltered conversations about their journey and what makes them unique and what makes them successful.
And now it's a top 10 most popular podcasts
Yes.
in the region.
In business and entrepreneurship, yes.
So how did you get to that stage, and what it took you, let's say, as a host, and what it took your podcast as a product to get to that stage?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think one of the key sort of ingredients of building this podcast was that I never really saw it as a business. I really genuinely did it because I thought that we don't have publications in this part of the world that sort of do deep dives with entrepreneurs and tech leaders and business leaders about what really makes them successful. How do they view things? How do they think about business and building culture and building companies and hiring and all these things? And I wanted something that was unfiltered, that was genuine, and sort of have some depth into the conversation. So that was really my motivation at the beginning. It wasn't like, I saw it as a business or a brand building exercise or something like that. It was genuinely, it was COVID. We were all locked in the house.
Yeah.
And, the world was going upside down. And I thought, it's a great way just to have conversation with some people that I genuinely admire and I really like. And that's how it started. And what kept it going is, many times I thought about stopping because when you're doing something on your own as an entrepreneur, as a solopreneur, of course there are many reasons that kind of will push you to stop. Maybe not enough listens, or why am I even doing this, or is this even worth my time, or I'm not getting paid for this, or there's a lot of things that kind of come and go. But why I am here today is because I'm not a quitter by nature.
Yeah.
So I just persevere and I do it. And I said, look, I made a commitment to myself that I'm going to do this. So I'm going to continue doing it. And the more value you see being created out of this content, the more you feel that, okay, this is actually valuable for the listeners. This is valuable for the audience. So it should grow and it should continue to survive. So I keep pushing it.
Absolutely.
And keep persevering. And patience is the other thing.
When did you feel that it started to create an impact, not only, let's say, for yourself, but also for the community you were creating these episodes with?
So the quality of the people that came on the podcast since day one has been really fantastic. And that is partially due to like the network that I've built and the friendships that I've built here in being here in the UAE. So yeah, I was never like, no one ever kind of pushed a guest on me, or I never had somebody that I didn't really think that they would add value. So from day one, I made it a point that, whoever sat in that chair across from me is something that I was genuinely curious to learn more from. And I felt that they would be able to add value in terms of insights or industry knowledge or even a personal journey. So I think it was impactful from day one, but I think it's a matter of distribution, right?
Yeah.
And how you build that brand over time for more and more people to see it. So there's the creation side on the one hand, but there's also the distribution side. And I think that's something that that I'm always thinking about and trying to work on and figuring out, okay, how can we increase the audience for that podcast?
So you started thinking about this podcast as, let's say, as your business around this time now, when you probably...
About 6 months ago, I started thinking that, this can actually become like a thing on its own, and I should dedicate more time to it. I always thought about it as, again, an extension of other things that I'm doing. I always thought about it as... kind of like my way to give back to people who are, thinking about entrepreneurship, and not only people in the space already, like who are already building, who are already entrepreneurs. I was also very interested in bringing in a wider audience. So other people who are, working in the UAE and in the region, who are curious about entrepreneurship or think that one day they might do it themselves. So I have them in mind when I'm interviewing guests. So that's why I also try to simplify a lot and try to make the information a bit more accessible to a wider variety of people, instead of making it like too kind of technical or filled with, startup jargon that nobody else can understand. So my commitment to the audience is to make the content more accessible, so that they feel inspired to either, become entrepreneurs themselves.
Yeah.
And if not, because this is not for everybody, to support entrepreneurs as they come across them. So when entrepreneurs are building a business, the most important thing in their journey is to get, other businesses to support them, buy their products, put them on podcasts, help them, do a partnership with them, help them in distribution, help them in go-to-market. So I want people in the broader economy to understand what local entrepreneurs go through and to support them when they come across them. And also, thirdly, is to invest in these companies through Spade Ventures if they want to. Like, if they want to be part of this, but they can't be an entrepreneur themselves. Yeah. So they can also, invest. So I kind of see myself as like the in-between the startup ecosystem and the broader economy, and trying to bring more people from this side to to be more interested in entrepreneurship and support entrepreneurs, especially local entrepreneurs as they're building companies. Because there is something that we have in this part of the world which used to bother me a lot as an entrepreneur, which is that everything Western is shiny. Everything Western is better. We buy from the Western company because, their product is better, and we tend to not support local entrepreneurs up until they're really big and their companies are really successful, and then we start paying more attention to them. But that's not how you build an ecosystem. You build an ecosystem by supporting entrepreneurs in the early days when things are really tough and really hard. So that's another reason why I do this podcast, is I want people to understand that while they make it look so easy, there is so much sacrifice that people put into building these businesses, and 90% of them fail, and we don't hear about them. So it's important, I think, for people to understand what it takes, the personal sacrifices that people have to do to build a business.
I think it's a beautiful mission, and I think it's a very impactful message as well. We've just mentioned, and definitely it's something that would motivate you probably to go more and more with more of these conversations.
Yes.
Because this message is heard in this case. I was going to ask, so what was probably something that if you're asked, what is your biggest insight so far that you got from the conversations that you had over this podcast? What is your sort of biggest bit, a business startup insight that you kind of carry over?
From the podcast?
Yes.
From the podcast, I think this is important for everyone to hear, no matter who you're sitting with, no matter how high up or down they are in the echelons of society, everybody has their own insecurities, and they're all people at the end of the day. So I think people feel very intimidated by other people, or they let other people make them feel small, or why is this person doing business with me like they're much better than me, or whatever. So it's irrespective of your role that you play in life. We're all people at the end of the day. So whoever is building something or doing a podcast or trying something new, just be yourself, and don't let other people intimidate you, because everybody has their own insecurities and their own problems and their own challenges, and treat them as people. So when you, I don't know, like sometimes when people see celebrities or CEOs, I feel like they treat them like an object, or or like I saw it, I witnessed it 2 days ago. I was in a conference, in a big conference in Sharjah, and I was moderating. I was doing a fireside chat with Stephen Bartlett. I think that a lot of people who listen to podcasts might know. He's the host behind The Diary of a CEO. And people just like rush up to him and like force themselves and like try to take selfies and stuff. And I was just thinking, I mean, he's just a person. Like you don't come to a normal person and do this to them. So why do you give yourself permission to do this? I think I swayed a little bit from, like, we all have our insecurities, but I think that's the biggest insight.
That's brilliant. Do you think that helps you to stay authentic in your conversations? Do you think that this particular attitude and point of view, or probably attitude towards everybody you talk to, taking him as a human being with everything that a human being has, including insecurities, including strengths and weaknesses, right? Does it help you stay authentic in your conversations?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You cannot... Look, when we're sitting on this chair and we're looking at each other and we're having a conversation, we're equal. So that's how you need to think about it. We're equal. We're sitting here and I'm here to talk to you. So we are equal.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the mindset that I go into, irrespective of who I'm sitting with. And again, ultimately, I know that this person, whoever they are a human being. They probably had a fight with their wife in the morning. Their kids might have been giving them a hard time at school. They might have had an employee that resigned and giving them drama. I mean, everybody has their own challenges. So I speak to them from that angle, that we're two human beings having a conversation.
And that's great.
And what helped in keeping the conversations with Loulou in the top 10 charts and for it to be more successful is the fact that I became more and more demanding with my guests. So I wasn't as demanding initially, but now more demanding. So I tell them in advance. I say, look, if you're going to sit and do a sales pitch, I don't want to talk to you. If you're going to sit and tell me something generic that everybody knows, I don't want to talk to you. I want to know the behind the scenes story. And I know we live in a society here where, people are not very comfortable in being very vulnerable.
Yeah.
But I try to push it slowly and surely. I keep pushing it, that line a little bit more and more to try to get more out of people, because that's the only way that the podcast will be successful and that the conversation will be valuable to people. Because if they want to get, a generic scripted sales pitch, they can read it in, Forbes magazine or watch it on like a 3-minute TV clip, right? But I think the point is to go deeper and dig deeper into how they think and why they do certain things, and also to understand the behind the scenes story.
Yeah, I think so the podcast is a great opportunity to tell a good story or to hear a good story.
To deep dive.
Yeah, exactly.
The point of having a long conversation is to deep dive and not stay like at the surface.
Totally. So you mentioned something earlier in this conversation that when you started your own podcast, you didn't think about it as a brand builder. But it happened to be one, right? Eventually, when you're doing the podcast now, so it does have a brand. It does build and strengthen your brand, your business brand, let's say. I tend to call it a media brand because we're living in an era of media, and in an era where media tools and channels are becoming so accessible to everyone that it takes just the initiative, the desire, the motivation. Everybody's got their own reasons why they might or might not start this media journey. But since you're talking to startups, and since startups are listening to you, I would like you to maybe you can share your point of view, how important it is for startups to get into that journey. Yes, let's talk about that part.
So just a couple of points on your question. I think, yes, the tools are accessible to everybody, and anybody can literally pick up a phone and start talking on social media. But honestly, I don't think it's for everybody. I don't think everybody should be a content creator. I know there's a lot of people out there that say, everybody should be producing content. But I think there's so much garbage out there. And honestly, there are, and that was like one of my barriers for me to kind of see myself as the media person, because I feel like so many people are trying to do this, and for the wrong reasons, and you see it, and it's not genuine. It's not. I don't know. I think people's BS filters are pretty good these days, and I think you can watch somebody and you can tell why they're doing it. And everybody wants to preach on social media. Everybody's either sharing quotes or recycling content from here and putting it there. And look, maybe it's how it's meant to be, but this is not for me value. So yes, I encourage people that have something to say it. But if you want to say something, be intentional about it and think about your audience, who they are, and what are you trying to tell them, and what are you trying to tell them that is new, that hasn't been said before. And that's why, by the way, authenticity plays a big role, because there's so many people just peddling quotes and things that other people said. Okay, it's nice every once in a while. You see a quote, it inspires you, you put it there. But people that make it, a living of just recycling content just for the sake of being on social media and doing something, I don't think this is how you do it. So be intentional about what you want to say, who you want to say it to, and why are you saying it?
Yeah.
What should the person reading this think about? What do you want them to think, feel, do? And are you doing this because you want to bring attention to yourself or your product, or you're actually trying to be of service to the people who are listening to you and trying to teach them something new? So for brands, I mean, I think, look, it's important. I think it's very challenging for brands, because especially for startups, you need consistency and creativity to be successful on social media. And I think, maybe startups can crack it by being very resourceful and finding the right talent that can produce that cheaply without having to do a lot of work. But yes, they need to be on social media, I think, especially if they are a consumer brand. Then definitely, if they are a B2B brand, so if they're selling to businesses, probably they need to be on social media, but I'm not sure what is the right formula.
No, absolutely. No, I agree with you. But basically your message is, whenever you start on the journey of creating a regular content, just make sure you know what you're talking about. Make sure that your brand brings value and not just becomes something that loses its...
It becomes like they call it in media, like wallpaper effect. So it's like the same. Wherever you look, you see the same. You see the same quotes. You see the same things, the same style of doing things, right? So there's a very good quote for... look at me saying a quote for Oscar Wilde. He says, be yourself. Everyone else is already taken.
Yeah.
So just be yourself, and I think that's how successful content creators become successful, not by trying to imitate other people.
Absolutely, yeah. Copying or creating hype, for example, especially copying other people's hype just to get or to grow your audience, I think it simply will not work. People will just not consume it, in my opinion. Have you ever been inspired by any podcast, yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I started listening to podcasts probably around the same time I started mine. So probably around 5 years ago. I typically listen to tech podcasts, and I also listen to, like, for example, The Diary of a CEO, because it has guests that speak about wellness sometimes and mental health and things that I'm genuinely interested about learning. And I listen to, what else do I listen to? Listen to Lex Friedman's podcast, because, I think he brings some really interesting perspectives, and sometimes it's technology, sometimes it's politics, and I find it exciting. Yeah, I don't listen to a big number of, I think like 5 or 6 podcasts in total that I listen to.
But that's great, I think. So,
That's where I get my inspiration from.
What was your sort of the biggest experience, let's say, that you took out of hosting a conversation this weekend at the big conference from the Diary of a CEO host? Yeah, say, what was your biggest sort of experience, your personal experience, let's say?
Well, it was an interesting milestone for me because I had never sort of interviewed a celebrity, quote unquote. So it was interesting to do it live because also usually my podcast is recorded, right? So we can change or cut things down if we want. So doing it live and doing it with someone like Steven, I think was kind of like a first. I think, yeah. I don't think I've sort of spoken to celebrities. My biggest learning from the experience is that I can do this more and more and more, and I think again they are all people. He is a person just like me, happens to have different circumstances in life and happens to be successful in his business and in his podcast. But ultimately, he came and I asked him after when we were done with the panel, so what are you doing now? He said, I'm going to the gym and then I'm going to do some work like any normal human being.
Nice.
So this is it.
Yeah,
This
great.
is it. There's no more. Then, this is life. You have to go to the gym and eat healthy and do your work and see your friends and take care of your kids, and that's it.
I think it's very encouraging for anyone who is, let's say, in podcasting or regular, let's say, content creation. I think it's very encouraging. So as the maintaining authenticity is a very important message as well. So I wanted to ask you, so if you compare yourself, let's say, at the beginning of your podcast journey as a host and the amount of time you spend to, let's say, prepare for the conversation and the way to host, and if you compare yourself to someone you now, so how did you evolve and what helped you?
I mean, I evolved a lot. So I think if you don't evolve, then you're doing something wrong. So I've done 67 episodes to date. So 67, conversations. And look, initially I used to prepare, but not that much. I mean, I prepare maybe for 2-3 hours before the podcast, and mostly because I knew the people that were coming. I mean, 90% of the people that came on my podcast are people I know personally and I really admire and I like. So I know how they are in terms of people, and I know how to ask the questions and what to bring out in them. But every time I record an episode, I watch it again, right? Because there's the editing process, and I highlight, areas that I like that would be clips for social media and stuff like that. And I take notes of how I'm asking questions, how, if my questions are too long or too short, or maybe I shouldn't have said that. And so there's always like a reflection process after. And sometimes I think, I forgot to ask them this question, which I think could have been more interesting. And sometimes when you're doing a conversation with people, you're a little bit focused on getting it through. And sometimes you miss certain things that come up in the conversation that you could have had the chance to pick on and deep dive. So sometimes when I'm re-listening to it, I think, like he said this, like I should have really picked on that because that was important. But sometimes I just like miss it. So every episode I've listened to at least 2 or 3 times after the actual recording. So there was always like a reflection and learnings from that. But now I prepare a lot more. So I spend at least like 2 days preparing for a podcast. And sometimes when I know that a guest is coming, like with Stephen Bartlett, for example, I knew a month in advance that I was going to do that. So I always have my Remarkable, which is where I take all my notes, and I just, every time I have an idea, I'll write it down. Whether I'm driving, I'm sleeping, I'll wake up and I'll write down the idea. So it's in my mind. So yeah, I prepare a lot for the podcast now, and especially now that I see it more as being like a major pillar for what I do. I take it very seriously. I think it's disrespectful to the guest if I don't prepare.
Absolutely.
So I make sure I'm fully prepared. and to try to get, again, the most out of the conversation. Because my job at the end of the day is to make them look good, right? So
I absolutely agree
I'm
with
not
you.
there to bash them but obviously while being authentic. So I'm not here to you know tweak the truth or say something that's not true. And I could be telling someone, look, I mean, I had someone, my last guest, I told him, your stock price crashed, and this is obviously not good. So we're not hiding anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, the point is, I believe that you are an amazing person. That's why I brought you on my podcast, and I'm gonna make you look good.
Yeah, definitely. So I can hear that you mentioned that from the moment you started to take your podcast as one of the key business driver, or one of the core pillars that connects everything that you do together so nicely, that blends it all together. So that's when taking it seriously, absolutely, as your business, as your job, as your day-to-day job, is totally, I agree with you, absolutely valid.
It's a lot of work. I think people really underestimate how much work goes into podcasts. Because it's easy and the tools are available, people think, okay, I can, record in my bedroom on my phone. Yes, you can. But I mean, how far is that gonna get you? I don't know. Maybe it might. I mean, I met someone recently. She's an Emirati podcaster, and she says she records from her bedroom. It's an audio podcast, and I think it's probably in the top 10 here in the UAE, or maybe even number 1. So, but again, is that the norm? I don't think so.
It depends on the content as well. So that's my personal opinion. It depends on the content and on the intention. I think you probably, is it Think Hessa that you're talking about? Yeah.
Yes.
I think that is an audio first podcast.
Yes.
And it became popular because it was very casual. And I think that's all about the concept that we're choosing. But
that works for her.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean that it's gonna work for everybody. So even though my point was, even though it's simple and the tools are there, it takes a lot of work to get it to a certain point.
It takes a lot of work, and I agree with you. You mentioned something very important as well. That is, I think, very relevant for brands who would ever want to choose a media journey. Is that you need to commit and you need to stay consistent. So because that's what sort of brought conversations with Loulou into a certain point where you felt that it became a credible conversation.
Yeah. And my message to brands as well, on top of that, is partner up with people who are already doing this. You don't need to do it yourself. You have no idea how many people I talk to, brands, big companies that want to do their own podcast. Fine. But why? You want to do a podcast to talk about how great your products are? I mean, how authentic is that, right? Or what's the benefit for the audience? So, and this is my message to a lot of people that I normally talk to, because I've been approached many times to do podcasts for brands, like to be a host, basically. And my response is normally, why don't you work with me? Like, why don't you support my podcast? I've been building this platform for 4 years. It's my 5th year, and built this brand. So again, you don't need to reinvent the wheel and try to do everything yourself and go through the investment and the learning curve. And ultimately, it will be a brand podcast. So people will always listen to your content with like a bias filter, because they know that you're trying to sell them something at the end of the day. As much as you try to position it as thought leadership or whatever. So support local. There are so many people like me, doing podcasts here. Sponsor their show. Help them take that show to the next level. A lot of the podcasters here in this part of the world are paying themselves, to get this content created, produced, and reaching out to guests and research and all of that. Support them, if you believe in their message and what they're trying to say.
No, absolutely. I think it's a great advice for the companies who might not be ready to have their own regular conversation, to reach out to podcasters like you who've already built the platform.
And I think they are. They think they are ready because they think just dump some money on it and it will work. It doesn't. You can have the best podcast and the best produced podcast as a brand.
Yeah.
Okay, and have, I don't know, 100 downloads. Is it worth it? Like, is it worth it? Are you going to be Stephen Bartlett? No. Is the X brand podcast going to be Joe Rogan? No. So invest in, upcoming talent and support them to grow and become better and bigger, and you will all win.
I agree with you. So it's both ways to actually think about their own conversation, or to invest into the conversations that support their values as well.
Yeah, exactly. Find the people that align with your values, that whose content is aligned with what you're trying to achieve as a brand and the community you're trying to serve, and work with them.
If you choose, let's say, 3 top advisors to the companies that would like to, let's say, strengthen their media brand in 2024, what would that be?
Oh,
including, working with other podcast shows. Yeah. So what would be your top 3 recommendations?
To strengthen their brand.
To build, to start, to strengthen. Everybody's at a different stage, right?
I would say the first thing would be to be closer to your customers. So I think a lot of CEOs that I know that are kind of in the tech space, you see them doing a lot more frontline work. So they would go and they would, be with their frontline employees that are directly in touch with customers, to be closer to the customer and to understand the challenges that their customers are going through, how the process is like in dealing with the customer. What are some of the touch points that the customers experience with your brand? How is that experience? I think it's so important to be closer to your customers, and because that's where you get like the most insights. Sometimes in big companies, like the CEO is on top and they don't really know what's happening on the front lines. And I think it's so important to build relationship with your brand, because these customers become your ambassadors, and they go out and they say good things about you. And most people buy products because their friends and families tell them about them.
Yeah.
Not because they saw an ad. So seeing an ad is something. It's maybe a discovery thing, right? Okay, I see an ad for something, but normally before I buy, I would maybe ask my friends, my family, people I trust about that product. And obviously that recommendations become more and more valuable the more expensive the product is, or the more investment it requires. So be close to your customers as much as possible. And I think the other thing that would be interesting is do case studies. So if you want to be on media, again, bring your customers into your media channels and share their experience with the brand. Because I think this is a great way as well for other people to learn about your brand, like through the eyes of normal, customers. So I think that would also be super valuable, instead of doing, other, let's say, maybe more highly produced things or interviews or stuff that people know that you're trying to sell me something. So maybe let me hear it from the mouth of your customer.
Yeah.
Could be better. And yeah, I think work with local talent. Look, I think maybe 5-6 years ago or so, you have the influencer culture, and I think a lot of people are looking to identify the right influencers to work with them because it works.
Yeah.
And so find people that are creating content, whether it's podcasts or some other form of content that align with your brand values, and partner with them.
I think those are very, very valuable advices and recommendations in terms of how you can approach building your media brand. Either you're at the start of your journey or you're somewhere in the middle. Take it as part of your marketing and look for, advisors from people like Loulou, who's already in a very, very mature stage of building her own media brand. I've got a question, like something that is not related to media, not related to anything else, probably to you as a personality. If you had a chance to have any mentor in the world, who would that be?
I have several mentors, so I don't know if it's a one person, because you can't really find everything that you need in that one person. It's like when you're married, a lot of marriage problems are because you want the husband to be everything. The romantic person, the smart person, the rich person, the successful person, the good-looking person, and it just doesn't work. That it's impossible to find everything you want in one person. I think it's the same for mentors. So I have mentors that I call upon depending on what I need. So I have female mentors that are successful businesswomen that I talk to every time I'm facing maybe a female-related issue. I talk to them sometimes about how they feel as working mothers, because sometimes guilt gets to me as well, and I feel like maybe I'm not spending as much time as I should with my kids, so I talk to them about that. I have a lot of men, friends, mentors that I talk to about, various parts of building a business. So, yeah, it's not one person. It takes a village. They say it takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to make you a better person. And because everybody brings something different and can help you in a certain area.
Are you a natural networker?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I think this is the number one most important thing that you can do as a person in any career. Whether you are an employee in a company or you are an entrepreneur or a content creator, it's all about who you know. And it's all about building these relationships over time and not coming to people when you need them, because that's not cool. And people will, they might help you once, but then if it's a recurring thing, then not nice. But I think make it a point to meet a lot of people. And sometimes people wait, let's say people, especially people in jobs and in like corporate careers, they don't work on building their network. And then one day they let go of their job and they think, oh my God, okay, now what? And then they have to go and build that network.
Yeah.
So in a world where, a position in a good company gets, 5,000 CVs, it's all about really who you know. And I think that's so important.
I was going to ask, what is the biggest secret behind successful and non-successful networking?
Okay, good question. So look, again, successful networking, treat people like people. So it's so simple, but I'll give an example. I'm at a networking event, and then let's say there's startups and investors. And then we're at an event, and an entrepreneur comes to me and they start pitching their company. It really, really bothers me. It's not the time. Like, I am here and I want to talk to probably around 25 or 50 people in this conference or in this event. And I want to talk to each one of you for 2 minutes, because I don't want to spend 15 minutes with you listening to your pitch. It's not the time or the environment or the place. And I'm not going to give you attention. And in fact, you're going to bother me. Like, I'm going to have a negative reaction to that experience. So you come and you say, hey, and, ideally you tell me something that you, again, like a normal human being, like if you like someone, right? And you don't go to them like the first time you meet them and you say, come with me on a date. It's not going to work that way, right? You go say hi and you get to know them and what do you do? And there's a conversation that happens. And it's the same thing in business. So if you want to pitch me your startup, like, come and first of all tell me, I don't know, I really listen to your podcast and I love it. Okay, great. Now at least like you open the door.
Yeah.
This is what I'm doing. Can I take your number or can I take your email? How do I reach out to you? I want to tell you more about it. But, I'm respectful of your time now, and I don't want to take too much of your time, but please let me do this. I'm doing this 1, 2, 3. Have your pitch ready, like in 1 minute. Great. So that's the secret to successful networking, is that treat people in the professional space like you would treat anybody in your personal life, and be respectful of their time. And I mean, look, maybe it doesn't work for everybody. I think some people would say, no, I need to be aggressive and get what I want, because that's how I get what I want.
That's sales, right?
It might work with some, but it might work with others. Like, again, going back to the photos with Steven. So, I get my photo with Steven. Great. But maybe you like really bothered him. And was that worth it? I don't know.
No, I agree with you. So you have to just, you have to be thoughtful about, when you're in contact and someone, regardless, especially when it is a celebrity, we tend to, to get our chance. And for what?
Yeah. For a photo. To say, like, I took a photo with this. You don't know the person. He hasn't spoken to you. I mean, okay, you came and great. Okay, maybe I don't know. I mean, I'm not saying this is my feeling and my views on things. I think if you want to network successfully and you want to build lasting relationships and good connections, you have to treat people with respect, and you have to treat them like people, not as something that you want something from. Investors are not ATM machines. Again, celebrities, they're not photo ops for you. And there are sometimes these celebrities will do photo ops.
Yeah.
Great, go do it. But like, don't, barge in on someone and just, why? To get a photo?
Great advice. Yeah, great advice. I'm definitely going to apply that to networking.
But that's what works for me. Okay.
Totally. But we can practice, right? Like you can take advice here, and then you can probably.
And be friendly. That's the second advice. Be like, smile and be like easy or pleasant. Be pleasant when you're talking to somebody. Don't go very serious or ask questions that are inappropriate, or again, things take time to build. So be pleasant, smile, and compliment them. Tell them something that you really like about them. It goes a long way.
Yeah, I think it's very important how people feel next to you, right? It's like, how do you make them feel? So I think that is one of the things that is a big secret. Yeah. Great advice. And probably the last questions. If you had a chance to get, let's say, a $1 million investment or a year of travel, what would you choose?
Oh, a $1 million investment.
Yeah, I made it sound really big.
I love my work. I love my work. More than, I love my work. Travel is interesting, and I do travel quite a bit, but I get a lot of pleasure. My most pleasure comes from my work. So if somebody gives me $1 million to grow my business, I would rather do that than travel for a year. Today.
Great stuff.
As I stand, where I stand today, I might change my mind later, but work brings me so much joy. And I think it's, that's where you want to get to eventually. Like, I feel people who see their job as a job, and they're very disconnected from it, and it's just a job. Yeah, nice, but think about it. You're spending 8-9 hours of your day in this job. Why not try to do something that you enjoy and it brings you fulfillment and pleasure? Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And
as an employee, by the way, you can find those jobs. It doesn't mean you need to be an entrepreneur, because entrepreneur is hard, very hard. But even as an employee, maybe okay, I maybe not work at Google. I'm just saying as an example because it's such a great company, but I'm miserable in my job. Or maybe you work in another company, but have a more fulfilling job.
No,
not to pick on Google, by the way. It's just an example.
I agree with you. It's and as you fairly mentioned, you can change your mind later, but at this particular stage of your professional journey, you feel like you're at your let's say prime, and additional investment will make you even work harder, be more dedicated.
Yeah.
So
You
totally.
said it, the word. I'm at my prime. I've been learning and learning compounds, and I've been learning and doing and building for 20 years. And I feel like I'm really at a point where, where I'm gonna get all that learning and build something even bigger and better. So yeah.
Great. And then the last question: if you had a chance
Yeah.
to see the future or to go back to the past, what would you do?
I would go to the future. It's funny. My husband asked me the same question. He would go back to the past. I think I would like to see the future because I have two kids, age 7 and 5. And I would like to maybe go 20, 25 years into the future and see, first of all, what is that future that I brought them into? Because sometimes I feel, again, in one way, we live in like the best times in terms of like technology and wealth and, everything is readily available and accessible. Yeah. But you're also seeing other things creep up that are, harmful, like mental health issues and diseases and stuff like that are mostly due to our lifestyle and our environment. So sometimes I worry, right? Like, what kind of future are they going to have? So I'd like to maybe, go 20, 25 years into the future and take a peek and see how they're doing and what's the future like, so I can prepare them today, to be sort of resilient and ready for that future.
I can hear what you're saying. It's always so like, I want to teach you what's going to be necessary in 10, 15 years, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
No. You have kids?
I do.
Okay.
Too.
You have to as well.
Yes. And I think that's why I hear you so much from when you think about like, what are we teaching the generation now to actually manage and be resilient?
Yeah.
Time from now. Thank you very much. It was such a great conversation, Loulou.
Thank you.
I got so much for myself. Thank you.
Thank you so much.